if you
Yeah, it's
go
a big
this way.
mystery.
But technically, we're live. Maybe not on Substack yet. I fed it to Twitter and a few other places.
Well, I did get the alert that we're live, so I guess we could say hey to everybody and welcome to our Substack Live. And it's great to be here with Adam. Adam, thank you for having me on your Substack, and thank you to everybody who's joining. I know there's generally a process where people kind of
Trickle
slowly,
in.
gradually trickle in, and then it becomes like an avalanche of folks. And so it's always fun. But for now, I want to say hey, and if you're in here, go comment. I'd love to see your comments, and we're going to be reading it all. And you'll actually be an essential part of the broadcast that we're doing right here. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever done one of these at 7:49, but Brett, thank you 4:49 your time. Thanks for being here. I think the last time we've done one of these together, the last one we did, we went through Midas. So this time we're going through the alt media. So for everybody coming in, I think probably most of you subscribe to MeidasTouch, but if not, subscribe to them. If you don't see the little button, we're going to post it afterwards. We're coming through a different little channel today. But I'm pulling this up so that if you guys have any questions or you have anything on your mind or any questions for Brett, we can ask him those. But Brett, what's on your mind as we're, hello, everybody. So many people here jumping in. Thank you guys so much. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? Well, first, I'm always psyched to be here. So, like, for people who don't understand, like Adam and I basically speak all day, every day, and so sometimes we're just like, let's just go live. Let's just talk about this live. Let's talk about it with the people. Why not? And so, I'm looking forward to doing this. I think what's on my mind is what's on a lot of people's minds. A mix of excitement about the Tuesday elections last week, with frustration and like furor over what the Democrats did this week. And now we enter this next phase where Republicans are going to hold these ACA subsidies hostage. And we're dealing with the day to day chaos of the Trump administration as always. And so it's just a mix of everything. And, you said the times before, Adam, how it's, 750 by you, 450 by me. Always a weird thing here in Los Angeles to wake, because no matter what time I wake up, I'm behind. I get to trick people at night because at 10 o'clock when I'm working, people are like, wow, you're up super late. And I get the advantage at nighttime here on the West Coast. But when I wake up, there's such an avalanche of BS that I have to wake up to every single day. I don't think it's too good for my mental health. I'm not so sure. But, I open my phone and I'm like, what? The East Wing is gone? The Democrats did what? Trump's doing what? You just wake up and like, these are all the things that you see being on the West Coast. But, we do our best to stay on top of it. I see a lot of people here saying hello from New York. What's up from California? I'm from New York originally, but it's great to be here. And yeah, how you doing? What's on your mind?
I'm always interested in hearing more about what you were just talking about. Actually, I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that you sort of mentioned that to me the first time, and I never even processed the fact that you do have a bit of an edge at night, but in the morning, it's like, how did that work for you? Did you wake up in the middle of the night for a long time trying to figure out like, what was going on if you had enough time to sleep for an extra 3 hours, despite the fact that something could happen in 5 minutes?
I still wake up in the middle of the night. I'm up at all hours of the night, and I do what all doctors and people who study sleep tell you not to do. And I check my phone, and it's always like a bajillion notifications, text messages, emails, Twitter alerts, news alerts, like all the above. And, but I basically wake up at 6:30 every day. Then I usually like stare.
New messages from Adam Parkhomenko.
I stare at my phone. I start doing work in bed. The nice thing about having a job that's very digital focused is I'm able to at least read the news on my phone. I'm able to send out tweets. I'm able to write things for Substack. I'm able to do all that basically without leaving bed in the morning. And so I do that up until a point where I realize I can't do that any longer. And then I get out and then I start the day and I try to catch up on everything and start recording videos. As you know, I'm doing a lot of like Instagram videos and TikTok videos with breaking news updates and kind of news recaps and whatnot. And there's always so much to kind of absorb and then process and and then figure out our schedule for the day here at Meidas. We've got like an incredibly rigorous schedule where we're releasing videos here every 90 minutes on the YouTube channel, starting at 4 a.m. Those are recorded the night before typically, so that we're not waking up at 3 a.m. to record them. But they're recorded late the night before. I basically have a 4 a.m., a 5:30, a 7, 8:30, 10. I mean, I could go throughout the rest of the day of video, with all the various updates that come in. And there's certainly never a shortage of news. And I just appreciate that everybody's kind of come on board and has supported this operation.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been amazing, and you've kept it very nimble. There's a lot of folks that have tried to do what you guys do, even before, but not the same type of thing, right? There were just people that were out there doing stuff, and everybody wanted to have like a nice big office and a huge staff and all this stuff, right? And everything goes out the window. And then, of course, half of those folks found out there was a pandemic, and they just signed, 50,000 square feet of office space and could no longer use the office, and so forth.
Some people got screwed with that, like getting the office space right before the pandemic hit. But there are some people even kind of post-pandemic who, started these media companies. And I won't name names, but I'm sure you could figure out the ones who've sort of come and gone over the past few years, and organizations that I thought did really good work. But when I saw their business plan, so to speak, and I saw, they're opening up, they're starting this new news website, and they're opening up an office in New York and London and Los Angeles, and they're hiring the top editor in chief from Politico, and they're taking this person from I'm like, what economics are you basing this business on? Because I don't think that's feasible. And sure enough, I think just about all of those companies that tried to take this top-down approach of like, we're going to get all of this money in from investors. We're going to get hundreds of millions of dollars or $80 million or whatever it is. And we're going to hire, and we're going to expand, and we're going to get all this office space. And anytime I see a story like that, I'm like, there's no way. I'm sorry. It's not going to work. I think the only way that you could really build something in this kind of current climate that we're in, or at least my preferred way, the way I know how to do it, is from the ground up. And so I think that's the most important thing. I think everybody who's, on our team plays a, very integral role in the operation. I think we've got a very kind of decentralized platform of creators who kind of all do their own thing and run their own operations. And so it's really, to me, in 2025, going on to 2026, like that's the way you gotta, run these things. It's and certainly there's a place for organizations that have, reporters all across the world and the big office and all that stuff. That's just, it's not what we're doing. And nor is it what we want to be doing. And so we'll leave that for those folks. But for people trying to, understand the kind of current political climate that we're in, you don't need all that. And in fact, I think it's a detriment so much, because the thing is, when you get too big, one of the things you lose also is that ability to be nimble. And I think that ability to be nimble is the number one thing that you could have if you're creating an organization, or if you're somebody that wants to do content right now. I mean, there have been times where we've recorded news reports on a Supreme Court decision, or a appeals court decision, or any sort of story. And by the time we get it edited and up, there's another news story that breaks that almost makes that story that we worked so hard on stale already. And so if you're not nimble, that's going to happen to you nonstop. You got to be able to roll with the punches, especially in this news cycle where every day is like months and months worth of news.
Yeah, that's totally right. Linda Bowen on Substack says that, Brett, you could make a fortune selling your energy. What you described is one of the problems that happens a lot with campaigns too. I've said this for years, but they're so focused on, where their headquarters is going to be, and, what the layout's going to be, and all this kind of stuff, that they end up being places where good ideas go to die, right? And I've always said for years, the best ideas, I think, come from outside of DC. But I think to have an operation like you do, you have to have a lot of creativity and a lot of creative folks, and those are not necessarily folks that work in these office types of settings, and folks really kind of learned how they work best throughout the pandemic. But the key to being successful, I believe, that you guys have sort of implemented from day one is kind of having that rule of do no harm, right? So a lot of times in presidential campaigns, they've got so much red tape that, like, they're working in overdrive, the senior staff, to get to know, right, as opposed to like, that's awesome, let's get to yes,
Right.
not do any harm, have yellow tape to make sure that we're fact checking everything, right? Like, I can't think of a single time that I've ever seen you guys have to rescind something. I've sent you guys things sometimes on a daily basis where you're like, yeah, saw that, but waiting to make sure that's true. Or I'm not convinced that, that's not AI. I want to find one more source for that type of thing. And to your credit, I think that is another key piece that has made you all so incredibly successful.
And let's be honest, it's harder now than ever to identify, real versus fake. And I think it's honestly scrambled a lot of people's brains, because I don't think that we were meant to handle, first off, this amount of information that we all have access to on a daily basis. I think in a way it's maybe even dumbed the world down. We always thought like, oh, the information age, technology, people are going to have access to everything. But you realize you get access to a lot of crap also that people are ingesting every day, including now this AI, which really makes people second guess and question every single thing that they see, rightfully so. But we've posted things before that are 100% real, and people go, no way, that has to be AI, And so we're always very careful, with everything we put out, with everything we do, that it's, confirmed, like crazy. Like, there was an instance, it was interesting to see the reaction, a few weeks back when we learned through some of our sources about the Trump administration's plan to fire munitions over the I-5 freeway here in California. They were going to do, it was during the No Kings rally, they were going to do this stunt. And so we had multiple sources confirm that this was going on, internal memos. We had like all the details, and we released this story that the Trump administration was going to fire munitions over the highway, and that it was going to be dangerous, and then it was going to lead to a shutdown of the highway. And when we posted it, like even our supporters were like, how could you make this up?
I remember seeing it pop up, and I was like, it sounded like an Onion story or something.
Yeah, I think that might have been the closest hit tweet to Adam text ratio that I've ever had, because Adam said, what? I think I got a message from me that said, what? Yeah. And there was like a big, there was a moment there where everyone was like, how could you make this up? I can't believe you'd run with something. This is so fake. Da, 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 da. The Trump administration, ended up saying this is fake, this is BS, as they say with everything. Then like Snopes wrote an article not saying whether it was real or fake, but saying that they doubted the veracity of the story because the Trump administration denied that it was going to happen. And then Snopes then had to retract that, they sort of did a half measure. They didn't say true or false, but they gave the Trump administration credit, kind of hinting at, oh, this is a BS story. I got a lot of angry emails from people. Snopes says you're a liar. Snopes this, Snopes that. And Snopes had to retract the story, and they issued a new story, and sure enough, it happened. And not only did it happen, the highway did have to be shut down. And one of these munitions actually exploded midair. It prematurely exploded, and it ended up hitting a cop car that was in a California Highway Patrol vehicle that was in like JD Vance's motorcade, and damaged the vehicle. And so, one of the worst case scenarios actually happened. And, it was a little upsetting to me, to be honest, that people were like so doubtful that I think they would like, we make this thing up. But I think that shows, that we stick by our guns. We understand, when our sourcing's good, we're not going to go out there and we're not going to like BS people ever. And we'll let the reality of the situation speak for itself. I think one of the issues that we run into right now is we live in a world that's so effed up and crazy. And the things Donald Trump does on a daily basis defy comprehension. And so if you told people a few weeks ago, if you're like, yeah, Trump's going to knock down the East Wing of the White House, they'd go, F off, get out of here. But you wake up one day and he's demolished the East Wing of the White House. Like that's the time we're living in. So like, I think
there was reporting from the Wall Street Journal that literally, it was a number of interviews stated that even Donald Trump is surprised with how much he's getting away with and how quickly he can get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the Democrats are in the minority party. They really don't have much power, which is one of the reasons, by the way, also why I was so furious at the fact that those 8 caved the other day, because this was like their kind of one moment to flex their power here and actually show that they could do something. And they were showing that over the past, 40 days or so, until they kind of quit at the end there. But you have the Democrats in the minority. You have a Republican Party who nobody wants to stand up to Donald Trump, except apparently like Marjorie Taylor Greene. All of a sudden, like you have nobody in this party who's willing to say anything against the guy. It's become just a total cult, and so it creates this scenario where there's no resistance whatsoever to anything Donald Trump does, because he could say or do anything and they'll go along with it. Now, the one thing I've noticed where Donald Trump does run into trouble is when he pisses off not the politicians, because the politicians are spineless, the Republicans, and they will go along with him every step of the way. But when Donald Trump pisses off his base, that's when he runs into trouble. And so I think the first big example of that was the Epstein files. I think he really gave them the middle finger. And I think a lot of those supporters, sure, there's the people who are like the paid propagandists who you see on Twitter who will go along with whatever Trump says. But I think you saw a lot of people get really soured by Donald Trump, everything he's done to help Ghislaine Maxwell and everything he's done to bury the Epstein files and refuse to do a vote on the Epstein files and to release the Epstein files. All that stuff played a big role in kind of breaking apart MAGA a little bit. Then there have been a couple instances recently where I've noticed a similar fracturing of that MAGA base. One of the things was, and they're, by the way, they're airing right now the second part of this Laura Ingraham interview on Fox right now. The MAGA people were apoplectic last night over this Laura Ingraham interview. And to my shock, Laura Ingraham actually delivered a real interview with Donald Trump.
Watching her in the Oval Office, asking if it was from Home Depot, it was real gold, and the look on her face when he said it was real was
she was almost like trolling him a little bit, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, so this is real. It's not from Home Depot, because everyone's seen the pictures of those exact products that you see at Home Depot and that they're spray painted. But you know, Trump said a few things in the interview last night, and he's saying a few things. We're tracking this interview right now. Last night, he said that that he wanted to let in like 600,000 Chinese students into American universities, that American universities need the Chinese talent in order to succeed and to thrive. The MAGA people lost their minds over this last night. Like that was like, what the hell? Like, are you effing kidding me, Donald? And so like I saw them freak out over that. And then I could tell you right now what they're going to freak out about, because I just saw it. Because like I said, we're tracking this interview right now.
I'm taking a look at what ASIN's posting while you're talking.
Yeah, so ASIN posted how they are going to. They asked Laura Ingraham asked him about H-1B visas, and Trump was like, "Oh yeah, we're all for it. We have to bring in talent." And Laura Ingraham was like, "So you're saying we don't have talent in the United States, that we need to give out all these H-1B visas to foreigners?" And Trump was like, "No, we don't have the talent." If you know anything about MAGA, that is like, you don't say that, you know, and Trump used to be very against that. But, you know, I think Trump is around all these tech leaders and stuff, people who have succeeded in this country, come to this country on H-1B visas, built big companies, all this sort of stuff. And he's changed his position on it. That's another thing that causes a fracturing of the MAGA movement. The other thing I saw this week that's caused sort of a fracturing was that Bill Pulte Trump scheme where they said, forget 30-year mortgages. How about 50-year mortgages? Let's have everyone be on a 50-year mortgage.
15-year car loans.
Yeah, 15. Let's go on why don't we just do 1,000-year mortgages? Let's just stretch it out for as long as we can. The MAGA people really kind of lost their minds on that. There was universal condemnation for that announcement. And when we read the story, I think it was the Wall Street Journal that reported on this. Basically, Bill Pulte, who runs one of the housing administrations for Trump, he was the guy on Twitter, by the way, if you remember. He'd be like, retweet me and I'll give away $100 to the best retweet. Like that was his whole thing, which, by the way, always a red flag to me when you got these like people with money being like, I'm going to give you money if you retweet me or whatever it is. I'm like, something's
$100,000 if you, or $1 million if you pledge your support to Donald Trump.
But this guy apparently caught Trump on the golf course, had a printout of the picture that Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social account of FDR, and it said 30-year mortgages, like great president. And then it had a picture of Donald Trump, and it said 50-year mortgages, and then it said like the greatest president or something on it. And he gave that to Donald Trump, and within 10 minutes of hearing this idea from Bill Pulte, Trump posted it on his social media account and made this like a whole thing. And the reaction was swift. And the people in Trump world are furious at not Donald Trump, because Trump could do no wrong in their eyes, but they're furious. These are the people in the administration. They're furious at Bill Pulte for putting this idea in Donald Trump's head, because Trump apparently doesn't have any agency
Right.
of his own. And so
Well,
now the knives
and
are
Matt,
out for Pulte, who happens to be a good friend of Donald Trump's, actually, in the administration, like one of his only actual like kind of friends in the administration.
one of his only friends left. Maggie Haberman has been saying for years, and I think she's spot on this, is that Donald Trump often regurgitates and says whatever the last thing is that was said to him, right? So a lot of people, if he's going out there to speak to a camera, whatever, and a staffer's trying to get something out there, they say to him right before he walks out, and his opinion or his thoughts on whatever that is literally just shifts with the wind based on whoever said something to him last.
And by the way, it's one of the reasons why a few weeks back, when he met with, or he spoke with Putin on the phone, and then the next day he was going to meet with Zelensky. We said on the podcast that night, we were like, this meeting's not going to go well, because the last person he spoke to was Putin. Like, it was strategic. There was a reason why Putin called him the day before, because he understands that. And so he put all this stuff, and Trump said that, you can't send the missiles over, you can't be helping Ukraine, all that stuff. And then apparently it led to like this really ugly behind the scenes meeting with Trump and Zelensky, where Trump lost his mind again with him. And, I think to the casual observer who doesn't, have that analysis that you have of Trump, you'd think, oh, they buried, the crazy stuff. Like, they're going to be in the room together. He'll be friendly or whatever. But no, you got to know the last person he spoke to before going into that meeting was Vladimir Putin, who is an ex-KGB agent who knows exactly the ways to manipulate Donald Trump. And it's not exactly a difficult thing. I mean, the guy wears his pathology on his sleeve,
Oh yeah, totally.
I don't think you need to be an ex-KGB agent to know how to manipulate the guy. But you actually have.
And what's wild is like the Putin and Trump are similar in so many ways, but they're also so different, right? So like Putin, as you said, a former KGB agent, but was the dumbest person in his class at what was called the Red Banner Institute, where they train the KGB. But he gets it. He's street smart, but he still has this sort of Cold War mentality where he's living in the 80s. That's why Putin said, he could take the capital of Ukraine in 11 minutes if they ever went in. The same way that Donald Trump, right, said he could end the war in Ukraine with a phone call. None of this is true. And, both of them are just, totally out of it on some of these things. But Putin he knows how to play Trump the same way. When you guys post these videos of Trump arriving in Egypt or, Israel or somewhere else, they've got all these giant billboards. Thank you, Mr. President. The photo, the nice big photos of Donald Trump that are perfectly lined up on his route,
right.
Which reminds me of an old Ken Martin story. Ken Martin used to say for years that Walter Mondale thought billboards could win elections, and he loved them. He thought they were key. So what they did was they put up billboards from Walter Mondale's house to the airport in Minnesota and back. So every time he went to the airport, he saw his billboards everywhere, but he didn't see them anywhere else.
And it's funny. It's a strategy that I think, I live in Los Angeles. There are a lot of, celebrities, actors, and things that live in Los Angeles. What I've noticed is in the communities where the actors and actresses live, when they have a big movie or a TV show out, where does the studio put those billboards? They put them right by where these
West
people
Hollywood.
live. They put them right by where they live, because they know that those people are going to be looking, and they're vain, and they're going to want to see their face on billboards and on screens and whatever. And so they put them in the places where when they get in their car and they go on their daily route to the studio or to whatever, they know damn well they're going to pass that billboard on the way. And it's a strategitic thing. And it's the same strategy that's employed though by other countries.
That makes so much sense, because
in the United States.
I noticed that. I think I was at maybe like Pink Taco with Sam or something. And it was literally every billboard like around was one movie coming out. Some Leo DiCaprio movie coming out.
Good movie, by the way.
Yeah, he's got a bunch. Actually, Kyle and I were talking about Basketball Diaries yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. One of the questions I saw, I know you got to run in a minute, but one of the questions I saw is, what are your thoughts on leadership? Do you have any preferences? I mean, you don't have to name any names on this either, but just, what are your thoughts on what's going on right now?
Yeah, well, I think I'll say right from the bat that I think the Democrats need new leadership, at least in the Senate. I think the Senate has failed us. I think their strategies are all off. I actually think during the shutdown, I think for all the flaws that you could point out about somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, I actually think he did a very good job over these past 40 days, and he held
with
strong.
a lot more people.
Yeah, he held the line. He held his caucus in order, and we'll see what happens when things get to the House. But I think he does deserve credit for that, right? I'm very critical of people when I don't think they're doing a good job, but I also try to give them their props when I think that they are doing a good job, and I think he actually did do a good job there. Schumer, on the other hand, in the Senate, I think has been abysmal, and I think that's not to say that he hasn't been effective in the past, that he hasn't had moments of brilliance in the past, but I think we're in a different time now. And I think we're in a time that he doesn't quite understand. I think it's a time that requires, that we need somebody younger, somebody who understands the modern news cycle more. I understand Schumer was a master of knowing what would be on the front page of the newspapers and the nightly news. And, that's great for, 2008 or something, but that's not going to cut it in 2025. And so as I look to, who are the people kind of in the Senate right now who could potentially fill in that sort of role? It's hard to say off the top of my head, but maybe like a Murphy or like a Schatz or like, I think people like that who are, have some experience, have the, like the street cred, so to speak, and also understand messaging. Like Murphy and Schatz, to me, they've actually done like a really good job at messaging and fighting back and doing a good job. I think people like that would be incredibly effective in that role and would transition into that role, quite well. But I think it says something like you are, as Chuck Schumer. I think I saw a poll today that he's like the least popular Senate majority leader like of all time, like since they've been doing the polls since like 1985 or something like that, and that should say something,
Yeah, totally.
And I think
I was just gonna say if Harry Reid were here today, he would have never let this happen. I'm with you on the same page about Hakeem. I've been very vocal on things I don't like. I don't think that Hakeem should be out there and, supporting a Charlie Kirk resolution while waiting until the very last minute to endorse Mondani, and doing that resolution long before that. But at the same time, when it comes to the shutdown, I think he had a lot, 113 members that he had to hold together, make sure that they were there when they needed to be. They were working. I thought he was really strong today. But Schumer's a disaster. And, we've got plenty of qualified men and women, and sometimes it's people that we're not even paying attention to or we haven't heard of that can do the best job because they've just been keeping their head down. But I also agree with you on Murphy and others. We need to make sure that we're lifting people like Chris Murphy and Jasmine Crockett and others up. And I think oftentimes the party has spent more time, again, this is like where the red tape is, more time focusing on how to shut people up rather than give them the platform they need to get the word out.
Yeah, I think the best legacy that somebody who's been in the game, so to speak, for decades or whatever could leave is pulling people up to positions of leadership. And I think, in many ways, I think that's one of the places where somebody like a President Biden went wrong. I think had he done that sooner, I think people would be speaking about him much differently right now. And I thought he did a great job, as president, but I think people are going to be soured on, certain things because he didn't, act as that transitionary president and bring somebody up. But I think people can learn from that. And I think people should work to, bring folks up the ranks right now and show that the Democrats, are not this old institution, this old party, but are a party that, is okay with new blood and new energy and bringing new people into the fold and really switching it up. And if that requires, if that requires like a sort of public spat or some sort of disagreement in public for a little bit, to me, that's okay. I think you could air those disagreements and have that fight, now. I'd rather now than like right before an election time or something. But I think
look at Republicans
that we should be happening. Yeah.
And what they said about Donald Trump in 2016, every single one of them said terrible things that we would never say. We'd have a constructive conversation and then they all kissed his ass afterwards. But I agree. I think primaries are incredibly important. I also my only criticism of the Dems that were not part of the 8 is they can call for a leadership vote at any time. And leadership is also stepping up. You don't have to put yourself out there, but you can say we need a new leader, and no one on the Senate side has done that. The closest person I think to date has been Bernie, who basically said, "What do you think I'm doing? I'm out here trying to elect people to make sure we got some votes to do what you're saying." And I will say the Tim Kaine thing, as somebody who has been close friends with him since 2001, was devastating. And I still can't really comprehend what he was thinking. I know that he at one point didn't want to run again in this past election. He's had long COVID and other things. He decided to do so. So I assume that he is not running again. But with that said, to me, it's shocking for somebody who has spent a lifetime, not just in public service, but being a missionary in Honduras and all sorts of incredible work, and just built his way up, and has always been on the left of Mark Warner. The idea that people would try to suggest to us that Mark Warner was a no and Tim Kaine was a yes, and this wasn't cooked up in the back is just not good. So
yeah, I was disappointed by that. I mean, especially so I'll give this anecdote for folks watching, and I want to remind everybody watching. I assume you're all subscribed to Adam's Substack. Go ahead and subscribe to the MeidasTouch Substack. Also, it's
yes, please.
MeidasPlus.com.
And I'll make sure that there's a link in there when we send this out afterwards.
Amazing. And yeah, I mean, we had a election night broadcast on last Tuesday, and we watched all these incredible speeches, Abigail Spanberger, and all the winners and whatnot. And Tim Kaine was one of our guests who joined us, and Tim Kaine watched Spanberger's speech with us, and he was getting very emotional watching this, and we were speaking about all of this stuff, like the importance of Democrats fighting and how it galvanized people and how he was having all this success. And so to see Tim Kaine go from our show on Tuesday celebrating to him voting for this a week later almost felt like a betrayal, in a weird way.
Totally.
And
yesterday
we've had a lot of these people on.
Yesterday, he attacked House Dems. I mean, I don't want to get stuck on the Kaine thing, because obviously I know I always get a lot of comments that are like, hey, you could devote all your time and energy to going after Republicans, but we're honest folks and all that. But he was asked about Ro Khanna and others on CNN yesterday calling for Schumer to go, and he said he knows that they've got a lot of time on their hands because they've been out for so long while the Senate has been working. But 2, they should focus on their own leadership and not get involved in Senate leadership. And it's so cocky to me. Anyways, it's also just off brand for him. So I'm not really sure what his deal is right now.
Yeah, and like you said before, there's an aspect to it that makes it feel orchestrated. Given that
the idea that Chuck Schumer was a no,
that he
could have stopped this,
and the 8 people were all either retiring in 2030 or were not running.
And Senator Shaheen, everything that she had said, just obviously as ASIN had flagged, I think 12, 24, 36 hours before. Her daughter is also running for Congress, and has just been destroyed over what her mom is doing.
Yeah, it's not a good look, to say the least.
But more importantly, because I know we got a lot of people, what they did could literally put 50,000 lives or more at jeopardy every single year, and that's what this is all about. And so, if we were going to do this for weeks and weeks and weeks, only to have the same thing that was offered to be, we got nothing out of this other than a bunch of Republicans and Donald Trump who, unless our leadership changes, know that all they have to do is wait anything out at any time with us.
Yeah. And as we've said on the MeidasTouch podcast, and as I saw Jon Stewart, echo on his monologue, which I thought was great last night, like they're counting on now, like you got to think about what the process is. You're counting on the House to take up the Senate to take up a vote on this. Then you're counting on Mike Johnson to bring it to the floor. Then you're counting on, you're counting 60 votes in the Senate, Mike Johnson bringing it to the floor, it passing the House, and then Donald Trump signing it into law. So that's just a lot to bank on, to give up your leverage. I'll say, So to me, you have people right now who are already getting their ACA, premiums, what they look like without these subsidies coming up. In some cases, it's double. In some cases, people are going to be paying tens of thousands more,
I got mine today. I
more.
haven't even opened the email. So
Yeah. And and then there's this whole Trump game that they're playing, like, oh, we don't want to give extra money to the big bad insurance companies. It's like, F you. Like,
yeah,
none of
right.
us
So
like the insurance companies. That's not what this is about. It's like this fake populist thing that he puts on. And you're in the pocket of the big insurance companies. I don't want to
I
hear
really
it.
liked Murphy's response to that, just in terms of like talking about nonsensical. I mean, he just tore into him, but yeah, I mean that one is just wild, and it's just everything he touches dies.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's such a disgrace. But you could see Trump he's very much been on the at least until that vote, he's been very much on the defense lately. And I think you see his demeanor has changed over the past few weeks, especially since those elections. Like I think that was a pivotal moment. And so,
And the Epstein piece, right? Which I think combine the two of them, Waj Ali and Brian Karem, described it as a cornered New York City rat. Like this is like the one thing that has stopped him in his tracks.
yeah, 100%. Because and I've gone from thinking like of Trump knew Epstein, they're obviously best friends, they partied a lot, to with the level that he's going to hide these files and the other information that's come out. Now I'm like, oh, I can
With
only
guests
speculate
like
that
is it
he
like
did something.
Michael Wolff, right? Is it Wolf
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
been on? Yeah, yeah. I mean, just hearing this and the reporting that backs it up and everything. I mean, the fact that he literally denied writing on drawing on a letter. I mean, also anytime he denies it, we know the truth. So I know that you have a lot to get to, including clips from Laura Ingraham, one of your favorite people. But thank you, Brett. We'll return your time. We should do this regularly.
yeah. We absolutely should, and keep up the great work. And thank you to everybody for watching and for subscribing to
Yeah, there's
Adam,
some
for
amazing
subscribing.
comments about you there. So if you're not subscribed to Brett, please do. I'll send this out in the next 15, 20 minutes. Make sure you subscribe to Meidas. This is fun, as always.
Good stuff. Let's do it again soon, Adam.
All right. And then, hey, when I hit end, I think it may, just so everyone knows. Yep. I said it. So you got your minute to talk. If you're in the chat, because some of you guys are having conversations, keep going. All right.